Dear Alina Habba, I'm not a lawyer, thank God. And you're a lawyer, thank God. You could teach the and help the president. And anyone could teach him too. In other words, slash chief, any leader, because it's true. What you said in the video, I put a link to it. I also put sources like counter obfuscated because my words have been changed regarding a whole bunch of people directly and indirectly tied to former director to and as former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Excuse me, self recorded, denying it consciously, but having been used remotely, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, also collusion slash S with names at each and next to the campuses everywhere I went. And increasingly, all kinds of natures of predicate acts methods are associated with Democratic themed and Republican themed because everyone came through abridged campuses, including you, Miss Habba. In other words, so other ways, even though I'm not a lawyer, I could direct the president slash chief on a lot better because I don't leave out black people's whites of eyes. And nature itself shows that it's a predicate acts delivery system method. And this is what culture is about. Nature shows us that it is functional, how nature's identity is hyper invisible but still discernible, so to speak. But not just so to speak, we need to discern. In other words, this is the identity that we're appreciating, where how we appreciate the invisible but still discernible parts of speech of English grammar, and why and how. For example, hyper additionally, we can appreciate how and why we need more than one name for a verb. And look at the participle natures: a present participle, past participle. This is about time slash forever nature, as English is really having been revealed to be taught. Offensively, intercultural and interreligious spots of Connecticut are pretending other, they recorded themselves pretending other, offensively, as time collusions with the ones from Connecticut has rolled with the World Trade Center attack, including with the sides as countries, including with the sides of the building too, in the Ninth Circuit Court right next to it. Inside the court, they changed the date of legal papers from inside the court right next to the World Trade Center towers right before the attack. And that's what they showed to the panel of judges. That was proven, and that led up to a 2006 district court part of the case. Right before that part of the case, and right before the World Trade Center attack, I recorded, not knowing all the names yet. In other words, a whole bunch of people tied to former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants like a Thaddeus Grabowski, right before the 2006 district court case in Connecticut. He has collusions with people next to Fox Connecticut News, including with a Brian Silver involved with a whole bunch of prosecutors, judges, and others' identities of positions with New Britain Superior Court, and their family members and their friends and corners of the streets near them, in their schools. They have been planting predicate acts with facts at each campus I went. Now that becomes a subject. They also have been faking and changing what people say and having whole fake conversations in databases. And that's influencing presidents. They have collusion slash S with little kids and their family members, where how the difference of it was is used remotely. This breaching method measured and maintains. Others communicated for our founders, and they communicated about the scientific value of the breaching method that prevented anyone from free speech. Their speech was, to an extent, collusion slash us against everyone else. Otherwise, they were sentenced, including if as a majority of people, including if as everyone, including if as any grouping of nations from this. This is one of the reasons how all this time everyone left out phrases like criminally foreign influence and tactically delusions wrought from about what those laws were about that were entrenched, northern colonies and southern colonies, before America's founders were even born. The reason people aren't clear on American history is not because they didn't do their homework. It's because we have nature's communications replaced and changed. Or in other words, nature, when it's not criminal insidiousness, nature per itself, natural law is real. It shows us that there are other species bodies with two eyes. We didn't invent how humanity and all the other species bodies have two eyes. All exceptions, exception nature, like a fish with one eye. A demonstration of the same thing. /S. There's a hyper additional identity of value / value progression. The identity of all space / existence. That way too, because it is distinctly, is non-distinctly, and is simultaneously / hyper simultaneously all things. In other words, like things. The English was revealed to teach this. So Connecticut's Channel 3 News attached me to fake conversations with themselves and with others about the World Trade Center attack. Their sources include a whole bunch of people from the Britain Superior Court, including when they were kids. They were influenced by predicate acts with facts by adults who had themselves were abused when they were kids. That's why we have psychiatry with all kinds of criminally foreign influenced uses of their databases that no one's looking into, uses of the lawyers, that all kinds of scams with them, and tactically delusions raw. That's why they can't get onto paper one name in sequence into branch. That's why they have some KKK. Excuse me. There were a whole bunch of people with the name Leahy at Harvard Hospital who faked conversations with me. And they did a tricky thing too, with one of the people with the Parks and Recreation of Wethersfield, involved with foreign and domestic medical families, overt criminal enterprises, private ones at the same time, foreign and domestic military too. They're not going to hide. They're not going to lie to me. They're not going to lie to you. Get them on paper. Tell me who disbelieves, please. I was at the courts for years. I've been asking on YouTube. Get them on paper. They have criminally foreign influence, tactical delusions, wrought readings of statutes regarding the validity of what is said online. They left out exceptions and exception nature proper. No, because they have roles with wire crime acts and methods. Wethersfield police also pretended they had conversations with me as a kid, and I went at all. I never went to the police station as a kid. And when I was arrested, I never had any conversations with them. The kids who did go down when they wanted me to go down to the police station to be interviewed, it was right after they made an exception of a private school kid named Chris Walters. And I didn't even have communications with him. In other words, whatever they brought them there for. And he gave an affidavit, and to me and to others, that they forced him to put fake things in databases. Increasingly, Kevin Dillon was involved with that. Increasingly, a whole bunch of people I don't know the names of tied to a Kevin Dillon, like a Robert Rodriguez, are involved with planting predicate acts on all sides of my house. And they have more people involved with violence and weapons, not legitimately as police forms, and it's with overt criminal enterprises in foreign countries. These are people involved with border interstates, people that go back to the campuses, and that they have roles with on-off campuses, relationships with other countries, A through Z, speaking about things like crimes together, while there's still predicate acts with facts, needs, nature, styles, and that being haven't been used as collusions that are also singularly used, but no one knows that at A through Z. That's one of the answers why and how they left out criminally foreign influence databases and the value of that to reason and the answers with all the questions that nature shows us itself. Not just our books, like what is slavery about? Slavery is about a predicate acts with facts delivery system method. Someone wants to debate that. First I have them debate. First, excuse me. Slavery is about a human fact treatment nature breaching method. If anyone wants to deny that slavery was about a human fact treatment nature breaching method, their logic will have inherent to it, active to it, and progressive to it, increasingly demonstrations of the same thing. /S. In other words, And it will also show how exceptions in exception nature have been valued faked exceptions. Boolean logic, A, therefore B, believing out exception, faking it. Increasingly, people say things at locations, people time we're going to be, people set up people having been next to each other so they could cover up how they already put fake things in databases and had themselves used for that and that for way worse at all locations /s no one ever fathomed. It has complete remote possession of the sense and sensibilities, to use Jane Austen's phrase, of the kids of each age of fact, tribute nature, and of the adults, the middle age, and of the elderly, multi-front. The suburbs were designed before America's founders were born for a torture, extortion, slavery method. The only reason people get away with debating such and the validity and the value of it, in other words, and where we can make hyper positives out of negatives. The breaching method knew that nature would show us to do that. So it changed and tactically measures and maintains sickly distinctly campuses A through Z, incapable of defending the principles of education necessary to defend our founders' communications, recorded, replaced in our faces, and self-value rules being used remotely as styles needing to pretend things are debatable that are not. There are mass styles of, there are criminally forward influence readings of statutes and precedents to an extent they have a consciousness of, but to an extent they're tactically delusions are too, but that's recorded. Police, lawyers of Weathersfield, retired Weathersfield police chiefs, and of the FBI. FBI Director Robert Luskin has a Robert Chevrolet. It has people next to his offices leaking their roles with use /s of location /s, collusion /s, because there are other countries that were and will avert criminal enterprises and private ones as their family members at formal database locations and informal database locations, unspecified, and then further at ones with unspecified, but and then further with ones at campuses as collusion /s, further with all location /s. See, the suburbs were designed tactically denatured while being a landscape theater, while everyone not realizing, they were being forced onto value nature systems, tactical ulterior from what nature would demonstrate as positive. Is going to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Excuse me, and then hyper additionally, we're how we are ground, hyper additionally, its identity relationship to itself and the only increasing value of that. For how nature communicates with us. Again, just like with the black pupils, white divides, also showing us its difference, its hyper difference. We have the same color eyes, and we have the same colors of eyes, and there are exceptions. But black and white are the colors that we have that are the same. We have a human species body of individual bodies and all group differences that nature is forcing us to use to discern its hyper difference. And that is forcing us to need increasingly to value. We can ignore its system, but then it shows us with negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature as not just as criminal insidiousness, but as criminal insidiousness / hyper criminal insidiousness. And this is important to discern because since some ancient times, this breaching method, force, check, hurt, and persuade, there are proofs that there was a breaching method, a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise method worse than war crimes that forced, tricked, and hurt and persuaded the names, the phenomenon of the names of the species body as countries, as semi-ancient equivalents. It forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded them to need to respond to things syntactically, simultaneously needing to ignore things more and more. because they're getting over on the something. When you guys use words like radical and extremism, you have then when you defend that, it screens roles with recorded wire crime acts and methods that the FBI has an extent of their knowledge of, where they just fake the whole transcripts and change it. The same thing with digital evidences, and that is increasingly with a whole bunch of countries at the same time collusion slash us with them, and that is not just to save them, because there was also a hyper criminally foreign influence, and the differences of their guilt was is used remotely too. At the same time with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, all this was is recorded. They have consciously been putting allusions into to databases, but the people themselves don't even realize to an extent. So this is discernible. You just have to get mandated law followed properly at all locations slash S. That's why we're supposed to have mandated law followed and the right to remain. Plus the courts, the Sandy Hook campuses, including a prison there, has names that have been involved with the security at the campuses and the people tied to the databases, even medical. In some ways, concentrated differently, worse. The difference of that with the guilt, too, is hid behind by the off campuses roles with this. But it also self-value roles, where how people rely on experts and information in databases, which is increasingly relative. See, the databases of the republic for which we stand, which is an ancient, criminally re-engineered, you know, identity of database relativity slash relativities to ourselves and to ourselves further as the grounds, voicings, and as our own, hyper additionally as that ground. Because everything, where and how, everything is a semi-nature relationship to where, for example, we are not, we didn't invent how the other species bodies have two eyes, and we have it. We even all exceptions like where we invented it, because in other words, where humanity has kids and so those exceptions come with demonstration of the same thing. For example, slash S, all the different species bodies, and we invent that. So we have quality aspects in nature that are distinct, non-distinct, simultaneous, but also for that further slash hyper simultaneous. Because there are distinct parts of the hyper invisible, but still discernible too. Which is why I refer to the participle natures as participle natures, even though I never read it to speak about them like that. Nature shows us this. The present participle and the past participle. So the present is about this now active. And the past participle is about past, but this is about time. But this is about time slash forever nature. And forever nature slash time conversely being true. Being hyper truth. In other words, truth can be used for lies. Truths can be used to screen lies. Truths can be used to screen motivations. Increasingly, a breaching method knew that people would need to have, it would need to have its roles with motivate. What caused slavery? What motivated roles with slavery? When people say money, a breaching method measured and maintained. They're educators in themselves, having had criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions, wrought abuses of themselves, formally, by the people with the who had responsibilities to communicate for our founders. Why and how they did not have free speech because they were fact, human nature, tortured, extorted, and enslaved. No one will allow anyone to speak honestly about the extortion of George Washington. And then they quote books and make a nature debate. Oh, what's your research? We were supposed to refer to our founders plural as James Madison singular. And then they went and got George Washington to agree to help them. And there were internationally monitored conversations involved with sick things entrenched like slavery and like sickly distinctly how against the colors black and white. But against black, northern colonies and southern colonies, no. because the breaching method was entrenched with all kinds of sick things that no one wanted collusions with. But if you spoke up about it, you would be sensed, including if as a majority of people, including if as everyone. And there were more than 13 colonies entrenched when they went and got George Washington to agree to help them and to use that plan. One general didn't have means to fight with England and the internationally monitored conversations, and there were more than 13 colonies, and they didn't get along with themselves. And England's identity, for example, is bigger than itself and more finite than itself in ways it never had control of. So this breaching method has a method of torturing, extorting, and in fact, human nature enslaving, therefore physically enslaving countries A through Z. It's recorded part of why and how the suburbs are still manifest the way they are, even though that even before cars, they wanted to build safer and better and a better identity of relationship to itself, the ground and nature. Native Americans are 3/3 of our founders. They are 1/3 before our founders were even born. And then they're the part that coupled with James Madison and his plan. Because for example, president/chief. Hyper additionally from what black people's whites of eyes. See, this system of pantheism we're going to use. Pantheism was more probably and was demonstrably appreciation of the one singular identity of hyper invisible but still discernible. That's why the ism of pantheism is what we're trying not to. All isms, if you're speaking about ism, you're speaking about visible but still discernible. And there means to discern, leaving out and changing things. Self-value too, because otherwise would have been revealed. Things that we know true always. Me, many people, like the people in the back of those in those buildings in the back of the rap videos. Little kids, and when we're older, but by the time, even if you stay speaking about that properly, honestly, always, you're going to stay having people put fake things in databases, timing where you go. It's recorded. These are people putting fake conversations with people, excuse me, and pretending people are following them. And then they pretend they have mental diagnosis. Tactically delusions are criminally foreign influence experts on reason in the mind. Therefore, on everything. All kinds of legal corruption at Hartford Hospital and a whole bunch of names involved with the names Cololo and Smith. And I don't know all their names, but their patients too. And this Leahy family is involved with a whole bunch of people in the Britain Superior Court, Connecticut District Court, and Harper Courts, also with former director of the F.B.I. Recorded with them where the branches of government individually grouped them together. They have predicate acts methods grouped too. And they have them further distinct simultaneously together, the branches of government. And it's right where and how the differences of them or the intelligence being criminally foreign influence having been. And that's, in other words, they don't have an identity to defend. They're a certain type of victim / hyper victim who needed to self-value contrast, needed to self-value countries A through Z. This is why they have the suits and ties, counters and exceptions as collusions as an array. Leaving out and having left out what is inseparable from all history, not just American history, what caused slavery. Even in fact, human nature, but the proofs that they took down mountains to cause it. Specifically to cause people to ask that question and answer it wrong, and then defend that. And so to hide behind that. The breaching method that nature itself would have shown everyone by now. Give it a fake branches, bow, and there is sin fall, but there is seed. again, renew, the unabridged, proceed. Who disbelieves? So, Wethersfield police taught me to fake conversations with them as an adult, too, with two Mendez police, with the Wethersfield Police Department, involved with people at next to Fox Connecticut News, too, with the name Mendez and with the names Domain. And they recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed sexual things about Allison Mulcahy. She's all there, and other female and male intelligence families who leaked things to me and demonstrated their roles of predicate acts against me and others. And as rules with names, I planted evidences on all sides of my house from other areas. I never saw the domains on my street. Rick C. and Paglione sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm also roles with New Britain Superior Court people and our Gill family and intelligence families on Covington Street, which years later, and then they recorded, confess, demonstrate, confirm things to me about that. They've been and demonstrate intercities. They have all kinds of. They just fake things that are put fake transcripts of recorded conversations. They have people say things and record things after they already communicated other communications, racketeering, worse than war crimes. Is another thing that slavery is about, reassigning what nature communicates with black people's rights of act. And with the simultaneous / hyper simultaneous, nature shows us to stack what's true always. Nature shows us we know in every country A through Z. Culture is about, for example, when correctly true always, we know that everybody knows to an extent the past that's not even here now. It's still here in value now. To an extent they know about it. And there's a part of the past that you don't know about. Every single body of the human species body, of individual bodies, with all group differences being generated by that one that's generated in the same way with other species bodies. If all exception nature, specifically to show the same thing. And it valued here with a special difference and as our own. Or it is forced from here, lethal hadith, as a negative identity relationship to itself, relative to Earth's a special difference, with the identity of all space / existence, as every identity is. It's already relative to all positive and negative equally. But then we are a quality of diffusion further, positive or negative, the ways we know. But we also know that Native Americans have been forced on reservations. We don't want that. They are 3/3 of our founders. They are the founders. There were 3 natures of America's founders before America's founders were even born. There were every country fell. Every modern country started with the breaching method still entrenched. Not just northern colonies, southern colonies in America. It's the same thing. That's why in America and in Russia, before America, they obviously didn't want that and don't want the suburbs the way the suburbs in America and Russia and Ukraine look almost exactly the same. There are people say, oh, well, I'm happy with it. Those are the people involved with all kinds of natures of organized crime, like this Leahy family. Never had a conversation with them in my life. They pretended through the mail. They've been pretending through the mail. They had conversations with me. They have roles with intermilitary. They're leaking now. And we're going to go more and more into it because I can't get them out to paper. I said, I want that. Including Wethersfield police that are refusing to identify themselves. I think they're going to leak things because I never talked to a Brendan Leahy, but they're leaking that they're going to confess stuff about that because they also confessed role switching and forging names, and they have others are playing stupid. There's a guy with the name Lord. I don't know his name yet. There are other. I don't know if he's a Wethersfield police. They mix with other police forms because they have F.B.I. and state police families interstates with the one named Cololo. The Wethersfield police, they brought up the name Cololo. They didn't give the whole name. Bob Chase, with Whiting Forensics, he confessed the name Phil Cololo. He was supposed to read me a police report. He said had Phil Cololo involved with it. And with the principal child abuser, they were still forcing it then. A principal upskirt nature. I recorded him with all the way worse crimes with kids and digital crime acts and methods and females with the courts involved with the FBI planting evidences, intercities, intra-cities before, and intra-campuses. Dean Judd and his kid will tell you, I never had a word, they better tell you, I never had a word of conversation with Dean Judd's son or himself. In other words, they're involved with, before that, I never, in other words, Eric Burgess made all these confessions and requests for help. And I tried to get the help. But I didn't tell them or the people I tried to get everything. You know, because I'm not we're listening to anything honestly. And while delusions are up. And there were exceptions. When I put exceptions, they use the exceptions to criminally foreign influence. And for criminally foreign, while being and haven't been used remotely. Increasingly, people have been attaching me to fake conversations with themselves and with others at the same time with them. Increasingly, Wethersfield interbranch offices, the state of Connecticut judicial branch office in conjunctions to it, like Wethersfield Pizza House. They have all kinds of rhymes with roles with identity thefts, frauds, and slanders with people from other countries and with people with the Wethersfield police involved with wire crimes with them. Identity theft, frauds, slanders, whole bunch of intelligence with the FBI and with courts and with the people that train the police, the intelligence community at Central Connecticut State University in the Britain, Connecticut, are and have been through time with campuses, not just because they're an education college. They've been roles with foreign and domestic military, as ones too, with the medical families, putting predicate acts in databases, using the right to lie roles, increasingly putting more building on lie progressions from those predicate acts with the databases. Ray Reynolds will tell you too. Ray Reynolds and Joe DeMoro are some of the people involved with the intelligence community recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed. They involved with Joe DeMoro, Ray Reynolds, and Eric Jensen, and Mike Roberts with state police families, with forensics families. Also, Eric, Joshua Julian on the Facebook page of the campus of the principal for obscure nature with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Italian themed, Korean themed, intelligence all at the same time, collusion, slash S, more Russian, Americans, and this is nothing against any of these countries. You have little representatives here and there, fake sides, suits and ties, they want to represent themselves. What's diplomacy? Oh, diplomacy. Diplomacy, you don't leave out the breaching method. Excuse me. Head rolls with diplomacy also. We don't leave out the value of the Constitution unabridged and why and how we have rights that are too numerous to have to list them, let alone to some delusions raw, criminally foreign influence, collusion slash S at the campuses we went names and people tied to them and their roles with the crime scenes relative, like body dumping spots, plural, including if it was made up, the principal or the serial killer with the New Haven spot. With the West Hartford spot next to that guy though, and a blue van from years before they said he owned that van. Are people involved with Hartford Hospital, involved with that West Hartford location, and their roles with all sides of the Wethersfield Community Center and added increasingly with identity theft, fraud, slanders to me. I'm sure they're lying about to my family members about me since I was a kid. That's part of the things I recorded. In other words, and I was talking about this before I knew my mother went through the other day. People know the other things. So in other words, you guys don't be cowards. These are more people with the World Trade Center attack, and they forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded Americans and Saudis to roles with them. There's a hyper foreign recorded too. The Scalora family is also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed involved with some sexual and medical offenders of kids, including next to the campuses, identity theft, frauds of little kids with a whole bunch of different countries. Let's get them on paper, one name in sequence. And anyone in the military who knows these ones in Newington tied to the claw. What's the name of the guy on Facebook? See, I can't even get on Facebook. The military and the FBI have crimes with Facebook personally. And on Twitter, they put some obscure pictures before the sale of X. They should fear God now. Please, Kash Patel, get them on paper, one name in sequence. The FBI can't be trusted. I can't go there and talk to them, and I can't talk to the Weatherfield police. They have collusions with the FBI and other police forms attached me to fake conversations with them as a kid and now as an adult. So we have to get these Mendez police on paper with the principal obscure nature. I want the rest of his confessions about other natures of things and their roles with the Robert Rodriguez, planting Evans's confessions on my street with the ones involved with untimely deaths, no intercities. They might have been murders, and they have, even if they were made up, there was one years ago tied to that, involved with all kinds of natures of predicate acts and organized crimes through the years. Wethersfield police have a criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. It's not personal. It's fucking recorded. Excuse my language. Let's get them on paper, please. Kash Patel, Alina Habba, and President Chief Trump. Let me show the world how to speak for law. And who disbelieves, I'll show them right there the proofs. I'll let the black peoples like, oh, the hyper invisible, but still discernible. If something's true, not true always, we should discern it. In other words, we're supposed to be honest about the extortion of George Washington. There was no way George Washington's army could have uprooted. That's why they had to leave slavery entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies. What they communicated was that they wanted nothing to do with slavery. Everyone was factory nature, tortured, extorted, and enslaved. You won't start with the extortion part. Then you won't, because you guys want to pretend, oh, well, our first president was our founder too. James Madison was our founder. And the founders behind him. That was the leverage for everything. And they, even then, when he was a president, fourth president, he still didn't have free speech. This is declassified. And nature itself shows it. There was a breaching method in place. That's why it's also so important to notice how there's not just replaced the breaching method from the communications of our founders, but there are self-valued roles with it having been replaced. Oh, well, let's talk about being, get down. Or get around vaccines. So the only way we could, in other words, this makes us be able to, as a species body, we can do things for free that no one could even afford now. Even if they could, they wouldn't do it because it's too expensive. We have to take the ground below our feet. You know how many people are reliant upon hunger now through systems tactical no means to go out and just farm. That's one of the things you have to have respect for the leaders. One of the reasons they have to have respect for us, because we know they're bullshit. But then a whole bunch of people at the same time are pretending to pretend that they're not bullshit. So in other words, we have to be led by the hyper invisible but still discernible. No guilt. If we want to speak about guilt, if we want to do it properly, the breaching method should be left out anyway. But no one could do that. Increasingly, Connecticut's corrections offices has rules with years apart. Child abusers, leaders of the kids. And increasingly, ones at Central Connecticut State University, they just try to apparently they have people take their pictures and do little tricks to make it look like I know them. Like Kevin Caron and Mark Caron. Their roles intercities with the spots tied to them is recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed by a whole bunch of people tied to them, putting predicate acts in databases. They'll tell you if you ask them correctly, I'm sure. In other words, I never even saw them inside of a campus. But then, no, except in Wethersfield. I saw them one time at a campus in New Britain. And I didn't say anything to them. That campus, since I was in grammar school in Wethersfield, it's increasingly having been confessed, demonstrated, confirmed roles with all kinds of cultural rackets, with the KKK Confederate flag team Latino themed, Italian themed, and Korean are increasing. Is not, love you guys, Korea, North Korea, South Korea, but where there's there are people with psychiatry, and then they go off. They're speaking about things like anything positive or negative. They're predicate acts with factuals and tactically delusions wrong with the names involved here, with the wire crime acts and methods. So, in other words, there's a Gill family on Covington Street in the Britain, Connecticut, who's increasingly, since I was involved with people since I was a kid, who have been planting evidence on my street with them. They have roles with the training intelligence, apparently intercity. A Bobby Jean and a Bobby Mail will also record, confess, demonstrate, confirm. FBI Director Robert Luskin and Harper Courts and foreign and domestic military are also involved before and after the World Trade Center attack, long term and short term, with people on the sides of Central Connecticut State University, like on Covington Street, with all kinds of international, and people at borders, and people with Mexico, people with Canada, and then they speak for culture anyway. And people with Saudi Arabia, the same little clique with the Scalora family and the Demoros, increasingly with wire crimes and Weathersfield police, and people involved with home break-ins in my area, and more recently, more increasingly with state police families, interstates, and overt criminal enterprise private ones in their roles with all the different countries. And people speak about cultures because they keep blaming on other things, others themselves, things that come with demonstrations of the collusions that are used to hide behind by the breaching method. So that's why they can't identify themselves, and they switch names and sequences into branch, intercities of Connecticut, intercourts. These are collusions too. Again, increasingly people on off the state judicial branch offices and on off the state corrections offices who had time collusion slash S there and at other places, and with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, interstates and intercities of Connecticut. And at the same time with the interbranch switching it, putting fake things in databases, and with the news at the same time, and like with WTNH has their sources at corners of streets from the founding locations all the way along Route 175, with the ones through Weathersfield. In other words, who are also, there's a Joshua Schumack has places in Newington, and involved with his mother too, with the Facebook page of the Weathersfield Police, and his roles taking pictures of people like fake ties, fake niches of ties to people. In other words, I never tried to seek him out. He was planting evidence I was a kid with people with some KKK, black theme, Latino theme, people with O'Brien family, increasingly tied to people within a Colal family with wire crimes with these people from other areas that have been planting evidence on my street, and people tied to them as the ones with their educators too. I never had a class with Marco Mancini in my life. In other words, there were quick exceptions of having had lunch with him. And one time, a Joe DeMoro, and in other words, they wanted to put a vomit and put it there, and then they went over to his house. That was their plan because they were planting evidences and sequence shifts. In other words, like a pipe bomb. Increasingly, people involved with the state judicial branch's offices, criminally foreign influence, have roles of pipe bombs, and fake exceptions of knowing me at the same time. Has something to do with a job Eric Oliveri with spots next to Trinity College through time, and with a Aiello family, also with spots next to Trinity College. Also, a guy Dianovelos was influenced by judges with their family members next to there, and people with the name Delaferro. I'm sorry, Guy Dianovelos, but in other words, I don't know all their names. I only know Mike Delaferro and Chris Delaferro, and I never saw them inside schools. They're involved with predicate acts with some judges and prosecutors and some child offenders, sexual and medical. That are, in other words, their roles with their intelligence community, with overt criminal enterprises and private ones not legitimately. They're involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders, you know, act putting fake things, roles of people putting fake transcripts in databases, you know, and refusing to identify themselves legitimately into branch. They also have all kinds of wire crime acts and methods. So you can't even call them up. They'll just put fake and change. You can't digitally communicate with them. In other words, that's why they didn't respond to my letter. It's the only letter I sent them too. There are proofs they already put fake letters. They did all kinds of things to hide what I caught them doing with Facebook. You know, it was confirmed on Facebook. Inter and intra cities, before and after the World Trade Center attack every year, there are predicate acts with fax methods between the campuses, and they are manifest with people from the founding locations in Old Weathersfield, all along that road and route. There's a I forgot his name, a Daryl Chandler. I don't know his sister's name. He's involved with people with Korea and all along with Main Street in Old Weathersfield. Also with people from Trinity College who have been planting evidences and all sides of criminal and civil cases. Also with a Mike Pandolf. Also confessed and recorded and demonstrated by people at Trinity College involved with my neighbors, the ones with the that used to live there, with the untimely deaths, and with this Robert Rodriguez from wherever he lives. He used to live on Route 3, apparently. In other words. And so these are increasingly people involved directly and indirectly with former director of the FBI. And these are people with Hartford Hospital also rules with fire departments in ways even they don't understand. All kinds of criminally foreign influence ways. Everywhere there's a database. And then further at campuses is recorded. That's why we have to get them on paper, one name and sequence. Alina Habba, please. They have roles into other police departments with the same houses, personally and professionally, involved with them with years apart. Child abusers, leaders of kids, they first forced. So, in other words, I'll donate pantheism to the species bodies A through Z, so they'll help us. In other words, because the species wants us to get off, to be united and simultaneously independent. And why? We want us to appreciate its identity to the extent we could discern, which comes with its complete identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. Only capable of being more and more positive here, if we follow its system and are trying to. Otherwise, it is forced from here, our special different Earths, through us. These of Hadiths. That's the only reason why one species body could have ignored what causes positive value nature progressions acts in nature's means out of nowhere for so long, even though it causes negative value nature progressions acts in nature, just like the suburbs are designed to cause, while not realizing to an extent by being a theater and only having remembered the only more and more the only means to cause positive value nature progressions acts in nature to self-value roles of criminal insidious in nature as a means to cause positive value nature progression acts in nature, like pretending, like bringing up diplomacy and pretending one doesn't understand that a breaching method also forced diplomacy to be a value. And all kinds of natures of organized crimes and crime methods are still manifest and reliant upon how, like, for example, psychiatry is tactically delusions wrought, not just delusions wrought, with tellings of American history. And that's relative because they've been putting fake transcripts. They've been defending their identities the same way. Many pray. Excuse me. So in other words, vaccines. We have black people's whites of eyes, let alone the cities. The suburbs are designed to cause negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature. And in other words, we could do amazing things if we're all on the same page, and the whole world's not going to blow up because we're all on the same page there too. Ugh. We can give easements to companies and natures of industries. It's worse than a pandemic some ways. There's a soul illness. No one could even afford. Even the wealthiest people can't afford to follow the system that we are capable. We were capable of being led by the hyper invisible, but still discernible. In other words, it's there. Not just with how we didn't invent, and the other species bodies didn't invent how we have these qualities, aspects in nature distinct, non-distinct though too, and simultaneous. Put that further / hyper simultaneous. And again, it shows us those 3 parts of time that we know. Even it shows us the value of seasons that are not even here yet. And we know other species value it. But we know now through systems technical interior from its own. Nature doesn't long us to hunger and thirst. So we can go back to tactically denatured suburbs and turn on the television and watch rap videos with people going home to totally concrete, asphalt, and big people stacking. Nature doesn't want them to hunger up there and thirst. It doesn't just want us to go send them food and water. It wants identity of the grounds, identity relationship to itself, and the value of that. Means that we could afford only we can make space means come out of nowhere, just with the same space. In other words, we could do all kinds of things. But space, we have to understand how it was designed for a complete possession / hyper possession. But the possession part is the self-valued roles used remotely. Self-valuing more and more. The hyper possession has to pretend other because nature is showing. Not integrity. Is speaking for any of the sciences. Any of these subjects like nuclear weapons. Okay, nuclear. Well, let's go over here. Hypersonic weapons. Okay, let's go over here. They're shooting machine guns. How are we gonna get the bullets? No, we have means out of nowhere. We have means to agree on principles that are led by nature itself. This is principle. How we have black people's rights of eyes. How it's about difference / hyper difference. This is principle how James Madison's communications are replaced, also are changed, just like nature's itself. And nature's been showing us, but nature's demonstrations with negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures, like in New York City with crimes, they are blamed on other things, others themselves. And they've been charging all kinds of money for psychological drugs. And the people go, I need those drugs. Those people run in and hide life progressions with their doctors, including if they're trying to be undercover or whatever. Their campuses are too. Criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. A whole bunch of people at Harvard Hospital recorded involved with predicate acts on my street, with a whole bunch of people tied to them directly and indirectly, and with the F.B.I. involved with the wire and mail crimes with them. Get me off the fake conversation with them, please, Alina Habba. Get Channel 3 News to apologize to the people and with the intelligence next to their place. Get me off the fake conversations with them. And about the World Trade Center attack, too, because there were a whole bunch of other countries and people and things they brought up with that, too, and with the principal child abuser. I want a response for his confessions to me. And I want a response for the violence and people involved with that, too. I could just punch them because I practiced for years on how to punch, but I don't want to do that. I want to deal with violence the right way. Plus, they have weapons and things, and too many people. In other words, to do this right, you have to get them on paper with the Weathersfield police chiefs retired and they shouldn't bring any more police chiefs into it, or they should just retire. Vaccines. I'll make sure I educate the police chiefs across the country too, because where they make subject treatments, like where they have charges, they have all kinds of criminally foreign influence uses of how they draft charges, like and all kinds of evidence is racketeering worse than war crimes. And then when things are too hard, so I'll say it this way because otherwise it's too, get down. I'm gonna show them how to get through these things. Get them on paper, please. One name and sequence through the legislative police and the courts, and then we'll get because the other branches of government were and are through time involved. That's recorded various ways and relative to where and to how they are recording themselves, replacing what's actually recorded. And WFSB also had roles that they're confessing and demonstrating, confirming, and recording before the World Trade Center attack with these predicate acts after it against me and since ongoing. And these are collusions with the interbranch at the same time with the news and with the lawyers. There's and one tied to them, like a Trantola. So there's nowhere anyone can talk. I barely had communications at all with Trantola, and with the people that work for them. And he called me back and he said, "Lady Mayor said I made a conspiracy theory. I can't get anyone on paper. Let's get a response from the principal child defender associated with this Trantola and Trantola too, because these are also people involved with some criminal enterprises and some intercultural themes." And pretending passions, emotions on my street too, and people tied to this Bill law. He's not legitimately with the intelligence community, and see his spots with a whole bunch of people tied to West Middletown, Connecticut, with people with the name Subway Bajario and the Phil Law involved with also Central Connecticut State University, the sides of it, with the prosecutors and judges through time, involved with predicate acts intercity and with the foreign and domestic military being and having been used remotely. Fear God in Wethersfield and Newington. What's the name of the roommate, the reportedly the roommate of Ray Colol, putting fake who was involved with those spots next to Fox Connecticut News. Fake ties, fake nature of ties to me. They took a picture next to me with him. I never saw him before that. There were proofs that they tried to take a picture and make it look like he knew me. And he stuck his finger in my mouth. In other words, they're trying to get me arrested too. These increasingly people like Eric Mendez involved with some sexual offenders as the police, with his brother involved with it, with the falsified police reports as the police there, with the Saudis too, and with the Demorals, recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved with people with the name Scalora at the spots next to it, at the World Trade Center, in the court next to it. All sides of that case in the court, their sources, all the same sequence shifts and time collusion / S, but the difference is racket. And the beginning of the Old Testament says, you guys want to speak about religion, for example, and what's debatable. The beginning of the Old Testament says, only defend right here, where the names of the people of sciences will come together in the part that comes before it. I should have the right to think you guys are delusions wrong if you think of all these crazy things about religion, like blood sacrifice and all that. It's in other words, it says only defend right here. Then you guys want to pretend it's prejudice. It's the government that's supposed to not be prejudiced. It's the government that's not supposed to pick a religion or get involved in things like that. It's the government that's not supposed to change and fake things, even when they're trying to do good, like with who knows, with how they changed Webb House to the Webb Stevens House. And it's criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions wrought, the summaries of American history. In other words, you don't leave out James Madison's plan. That's principle. That's what caused the Civil War. North and South had to be counter-extorted, forced to be held to our founders, who were still, who there was a third of them being forced. And all of them were being forced by the breaching method. No one had free speech. We're going to attend to this, how no one had free speech and how that was pretended debatable, and how they self-value means to, like, because people weren't doing the homework. And then people giving that excuse. Let's get them on paper, one name and sequence. Let me show you. I want a response from the schools too. There are more people with the security families with the schools. The agencies have been with the schools too long. The same ones have been complaining about in the background will tell you other. They will confess and say they're sorry, and they will blame other things, others themselves, distinctly from how they're doing it now. In other words, get them on paper, one name and sequence. We're going to examine how many people from New York, from Central Connecticut, New Britain, and New Britain have roles in wire crime acts and methods at the campuses, intercities through time, and use/SFM roles. We're going to examine others recorded and they pretend. FBI.